Would you trust a product just by reading about it? Probably not.
Welcome back to the Donovan Digital Podcast, where we share insights and strategies that help architectural product and service companies build trust, create engagement, and connect with key decision makers. Today's topic is creating great communications and connecting with your target audience. And I'm thrilled to be joined by somebody I've known and respected for over 15 years, Max Perilstein. Max is the managing partner of SoleSource Consultants and one of the most influential voices in the glass and glazing industry. His background in communications combined with deep industry experience has helped companies across the board clarify their message, strengthen their brand, and grow their business. He's also the host of From the Fabricator, a leading podcast in the industry that features some of the most engaging conversations with top professionals in the field. All right, Max, thanks for being here. Before we jump into our strategy talk, can you give our viewers a little bit of background, those who may not know who you are, and really what led up to where you are today with SoleSource?
Shawn, thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm a big fan of yours and everything you've done in your career. So this is kind of an honor to be on your side of the ball here talking with you. I've known you for a while. I started in the industry in 1991. My family goes back to 1898 in the glass industry. I didn't want to be in the industry, but as I was told, it's in my blood, and it really is. And so in 1991, when I started, I found out pretty quick it was in my blood. And over the years, worked on the fabricating side, for a few different companies. And then in 2011, I started my own business, SoleSource Consultants, to, help people out with a variety of, needs, from everything from sourcing to, market research to, some basic communication and PR, at a little bit of a different level than what you do. And so that's been since 2011. It's been going well. I work with the National Glass Association very close and really enjoy it. And I do my podcast once a month and my blog weekly. And so I try to stay intact with, everything that's going on in the industry and keep people up to date. And so it's great to be here with you. I'm a big fan, like I said.
Yeah, well, that's great. And we're going to talk a little bit about your podcast, but you kind of just jumped over what I thought was kind of the interesting part of your background. You have some television communication side. Just quickly, give a little background on that.
Sure. So I graduated at Ohio University in 1990, and I ended up at the NBC affiliate in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was my hometown. I was a sports producer. It was really my love. I love being in sports production, love being in communications, TV, helping people with radio and so on. And, it just wasn't paying the bills, but I still stay very close to that world. My best friend is a media TV agent helping news anchors all over the country. So I review reels for him. And that communication skill, really helps in the glass and glazing industry because, we're a little weak on that side. And so I'm able to bring that to our industry and talk a little bit deeper with them and help them get their word out a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so let's get into our topic here. And so again, you have a very strong communications background. You kind of get that. That's what I love about you and having you on this podcast to kind of share with our audience, because it's such a big part of what we do as well. How has that shaped your approach to working with the glass and glazing companies, specific, as you said, to this industry?
As I mentioned, they weren't, and still to this day, glass and glazing companies are not great communicators. Their goal is to, either fabricate, manufacture, or install glass. And, they're not known for, being comfortable in a public setting and speaking. And so my role is to, either make them comfortable or help them, myself, be a mouthpiece, help train them up if they want to do things like do public speaking, do AIA, CEU courses and things like that, and use my background and the skills that I've learned over the years to get them more comfortable to do that. And it takes a little bit of time, but it's been successful with a lot of different folks. And being able and being comfortable on screen or behind a microphone or in front of a crowd, isn't for everybody. But there are tactics, as to help them out and prepare them. And so my background has really helped with a lot of companies that really had nowhere to go and didn't understand how to start.
Along those lines, do you help them? Because sometimes what we find, companies really they know what they do, they know what they stand for, but they've never really kind of communicated that or written it down or really intentionally try to position that value. Do you help clients that way?
I do, but it's a challenge. There's a couple challenges. One is just trying to get people to narrow down the elevator pitch. They can't. A lot of companies are so vast and they want to tell you everything they do from every nut and bolt, and it's tough. You need to get them to understand how quickly they can get into their value proposition and where to spread it out. And the other thing is that a lot of companies are dealing with a couple different paths of communication. You have to talk to the architect and you have to talk to the glazer. So if you're a fabricator, for instance, that's the example I'm giving. As a fabricator, and you've got this great bird-friendly glass, as an example, you've got to sell the architect and you've got to sell the glazer. And that's two different styles of communication and two different groups that want different avenues out of you. The architect wants to know about the performance and the aesthetics. The glazer wants to know, what are my sizes, min, max, how am I going to get it? What are my lead times, that sort of thing. And so you have to adjust your communication on both sides. And that takes a lot of just, prodding and primping, because a lot of these companies, they know their products inside and out. They just can't explain it sometimes correctly. So I do help try to break it down for them to, make it a little easier to understand for those different audiences.
And that's a key point, 'cause I think a lot of companies overlook that aspect of it because, as you know, very easily, any point in the channel, you could have somebody that could switch the product, VE it out. So if you're not communicating to each part of that channel effectively, you potentially can lose what you've started at the very beginning throughout the channel.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, you know from being around, there's so many companies that desperately want to be in front of architects, and going to someone like you is the best way because you are so connected in that architectural community. But if they forget about the other part, of who's going to install it, you're right. They can get VE'd out. Somebody else could be a closer friend with that installer, and all of a sudden, all that hard work was for naught. And so it is explaining to them the best way to go and showing them that there are a lot of different avenues that they have to consider.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your process when you first come across a new client or potential client. What is your process in kind of getting them on board, explaining what you do and the value that you can present to them?
I know there's probably a lot of different ways. My way is I love to find out what they're thinking, what they think they need. I really kind of do a whole download with them. What are you looking for? What do you want to promote? Where do you want to go with this? What do you want to be? And talk to me about the things that excite you about your business. And I take all of that in, and then I build basically a custom menu of everything I could provide to them, and they can choose, well, I want this and I don't want that, and I want this and I don't want that. And then this way I can figure out, the timing I could dedicate to them and so on. So that helps. So it starts with a deep dive of listening to them on everything that they're thinking about and they need. And then I can boil it down into how I can help them in each different area. Sometimes it works great. Sometimes it's you need to adjust on the fly, and that's what you have to do. Because not everybody is comfortable, talking about everything that they do or everything they want, or they may not understand it. There's a lot of people that don't understand SEO and things like that, and so you have to pull that out of them and then explain to them, this is my solution to your problem.
Well, and what I love about your approach is that what I've seen is you also act as a coach and as consultant, as well as in many cases doing the work, but even scenarios where you've actually brought us in the clients on certain things because you think we can bring value. And so that, that consulting, that coaching, and which is really a great approach. And I have to believe that clients, that's a lot of value in that way.
I believe so. And I mean, I look at it as when I started the company and I called it SoleSource Consultants, the goal was that it would be one phone call or one email to me. And then if there are things I could do and I could bring, great. But if there are things that were out of my skill set, I would bring, other people into it because, I'm not an expert at everything. And so, for instance, when you talked about bringing you in, when people really wanted to get, further inside the architectural world or improve, their website look and their design or improve certain things, that I am not an expert in and you are, it was easy for me to say, you need to get with Shawn and, here's his info and talk to him and let him, give you what he can do. And that's worked out really well. And I believe, again, I'm a rising tide guy. The better our whole industry can get, the better all of us will be. And so if I can help somebody out by giving them to you and then you take them to a whole nother level, at the end of the day, it'll end up helping me too. It's all good. So, but I believe in making sure everybody is in the right place with the right talent.
Yeah, great approach. And by the way, we appreciate that when you do bring us in. It's great.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So let's jump into your podcast now,
Yeah.
because I think this has been, I don't know how you define it as success, but as an outsider looking, it seems like it's been extremely successful. From the Fabricator. For those of you that aren't familiar with this, you got to check it out, whether you're in the industry or not. Just well done. Great guest. What inspired you to start it, and what surprised you the most along the way?
Well, it's interesting. I looked at starting it as far back as 2017, and at that point, it was really difficult to, produce and get it uploaded, and you needed a lot of time and a lot of effort. You had to use different software. It wasn't an easy process. And during the pandemic, Andrew Herring, who's now at FHC, he was with me at NGA, and he said, you really need to do a podcast. You've got the blog, you've got some connections, and you like communication. And I said, I really miss talking to people. That's back in the past. I would really love to do something like that. But I said it was really hard. He goes, I think it's gotten easier. And he said, check it out. And so I started to do some research, and I saw that from 2017 to the end of 2020, it had changed dramatically. It was so much easier. And obviously the pandemic, brought a lot of different tools out that you could use that weren't there in 2017. And so I kind of made a list of people I wanted to talk to, and kind of came up with some different formats, and have changed it a little bit along the way to adjust. But I do it monthly. I talk to usually two guests a month, two guests at each show, and then at the end of the year, a solo kind of newsmaker. So it could be, Don Freeze, Mr. Freeze from FHC, or Steve Widener from Pilkington, who just announced his retirement. People like that, somebody who really kind of stands out as a guest, and just go with it every month, or if something important comes up, bring it up, and just have a conversation with folks. Talk about their past, how they got to the industry, and then have some fun things along the way, but always end with, hey, what do you see for the future? What are we looking at? And it's worked out great. The YouTube portion is small, but the audio portion has blown my mind. I never expected this to take off the way it is, and I love it. It's been really fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's a great format. It was part of the inspiration of me starting the Donovan Digital Podcast. And again, we talked a little bit earlier. I love the fact I can reconnect with folks I've known in the industry. When folks like you and I have been around, 30 years or so in the industry, we know a lot of people. We've met a lot of people, and I was saying selfishly, it's a great platform because you get to reconnect and you get to connect with people that are meaningful to you.
It is. And you also find out about people you've known for 30 years and you didn't know certain things about them, and or an angle that they take. And it's fantastic. Yeah, I think this is great. And I think that, you jumping in with your guest potential list and your approach, I think it's going to be fantastic. I mean, we need more information and education coming to our space, and that it doesn't have to be focused solely on glass. I mean, it's the communication skills, it's improving your approach, and all the things that you do. And I'm sure the guests you're going to bring are, really going to help educate people, and we need that. We need that as an industry. So even if it's not specific about glass, it'll help our people grow.
Yeah, agreed. So with the podcast, how has it played to help building your own brand? And how do you see the podcast in general helping companies connect and grow, if it is part of a strategy they want to use to connect with their target audience?
For my own brand, I mean, it's allowed me to grow from an exposure standpoint. I've been doing the blog since 2005, and it's in Glass Magazine every week. But that only went so far. This opened up a whole different avenue, and so a lot of people who never read my blog listen or watch the podcast, and that kind of threw me. I didn't expect that. So for me, that it's really expanded my my world. For my clients and other people who are involved, I mean, it's allowed them to reach some different audiences. It's allowed them to kind of have their voice heard, which is a big thing. It's gotten them more comfortable talking in front of groups. There's some folks folks that, it comes naturally, and some folks it doesn't. So that's helped them. So it's a part of the training, I guess you could say. So,
Right.
they can get on the podcast and try it out and work with them there. And then when they stand in front of a room full of potential customers, they're more comfortable. So it's worked on both sides, and just reaching a new audience. A lot of younger folks, in our world don't read, and they take this in, they're YouTubers and, TikTokers and things like that. And so, this is how you reach them, and it's worked out well.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned the blogs. We're a big believer in blogs, right? With all our clients, and most clients, we're doing monthly blogs on content that really, I say, solves problems. We don't
Yep.
want to talk about features and benefits of products. We want to talk about solutions you provide. And again, your blog goes back to 2005, which again, it sounds like was kind of the prelude to ultimately with the podcast. How is Talk to me a little bit about writing content for blogs and the how meaningful that is and what it really accomplishes.
Yeah, so for me, my blog was more of a kind of in a way, a page 6 sort of thing. What's going on in the industry, who's who, who's retiring, who's moving, new companies getting awards, projects, that I like to call out every week. So things like that. For companies, blogs are just crucial because there's the technical side. It helps you with the SEO and helps drive people to your website, but also thought leading. I'm a big proponent on thought leading, being a thought leader. Folks who want to learn about you and want to do business with you, want to see what you're about, and a blog with good solution-based content is unbeatable. And the stuff that Donovan Digital does, I mean, I know when I end up on a site and I see a blog, I have a feeling I know you're behind it because it's so good, and so it's one of those things. It's really, really important for our companies to share that insight and have it in a way that's easily digestible, like a blog is, and provide that insight and solutions. And again, in 300 to 600 words, you're serving a heck of a purpose and moving things forward. And I think it's invaluable.
Yeah. And it's interesting with your blog where you do talk about kind of the people in the industry. And I can see why that is extremely successful because people want to know about people. People want to know what's going on in the industry. And if they can have it in a digestible format that really works for them, even like when we do press releases, whenever we have people releases, publications always pick them up because people want to see what people are doing. So
Yeah.
I have to believe that platform has worked very well.
Yeah, no, that's strong. And like for instance, I mentioned earlier Steve Widener from Pilkington. I mean, he gave me the heads up that he was retiring, and I had it on my blog before it was out in any of the trade media, and it was just amazing to be able to share that with the world.
Yeah.
And because he's a great guy, he's done so much for our world, and so things like that I love to do. And you're dead on. There's a FOMO issue. People want to know what's going on. The fear of missing out. And so you can't beat that. You have to keep communicating. Folks that don't want to communicate are missing out. That's the bottom line. They're missing out if they think that they're doing it the right way, just by having the traditional boots on the ground, which is very important. They're still missing out on a huge element for their business.
Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Glass Magazine? Because obviously you do a lot of work for them. I think it's first of all, a great publication.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with them and what you do?
Sure. So it's a publication from the National Glass Association. It comes out monthly. The team there does a tremendous job, and so I write the blog on my own each Sunday. They pick it up each Tuesday for Glass Magazine Weekly. They sometimes reprint it in the physical magazine. With the physical magazine, I help out with the backgrounds on their top 50 glazer list, their top fabricators list, content for different stories. So if they say, hey, we're going to do a story on school security. Can you tell us who we should, who's into it? Who should we talk to? And so I can pass them along to folks that are both clients of mine and also, people I know in the industry,
Right.
That could be really good, insight and influencers for a piece like that. So I work closely with the editors of the magazine and the National Glass Association overall to help spread the word about everything we do in our industry. So I love working with them. They've been fantastic, and I think it's a huge tool for our industry that every month you get so many different avenues from legal advice to what's going on in the code side of things, and then just the features. It's all very strong.
Yeah, and as you know, many of our clients are in the glass and glazing industry as well, and by far the favorite publication for sure. So
Thank you.
it's great that you have that relationship with them and help them along the way. Let me go back to the communication side of
Sure.
things. A lot of companies struggle with kind of their tone and clarity, if you will, their message. How do you, when you work with clients, how do you strike the right balance between kind of that technical data, or very
Mhm.
technically driven, many companies, and the approachability and the messaging that comes along with that?
It's a heck of a challenge. First off, I mean, we do run into what I call the Steve Jobs scenario, where you have company owners who think that they are Steve Jobs, and they have their way of doing things, and it may not be the best way to
Right.
communicate and market their product, because Steve Jobs was one of one. But you have a lot of people that want to be that way, and it's sometimes not the best for their business. I think it's all about making it understandable and digestible, and also understanding your audience. Your technical information is going to appeal to a certain part of your audience and is never going to connect with the other, and vice versa. Your marketing speak and what the value props are for selling it is only going to talk to one side of the audience, not the other. So it's finding that happy mix. Getting it boiled down to quick, niblets, digestible messages, sort of things. I think it's crucial because people don't want to read a lot. They want to see what they need to see. They want to get their information and move forward. And sometimes that's a challenge because you get people who are very proud and they want to say, well, we do this and we do that and we do that, and they get very excited, and you're saying, well, we've got to boil it down to this. And sometimes they're not happy with that because that's their life, that's their what they've created, and you're boiling it down to a little tiny thing.
Right.
But it's if they want the audience, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so you've worked with some of the biggest names in the industry. What do you see, or what have you seen that successful companies do differently when it comes to either their marketing and messaging?
Collaboration is the biggest, and being open for ideas. So collaborating not only with your experts, the people like you or I or other consultants, other media people, collaborating also with the magazines, or the end publication or end vehicle, because those folks have amazing ideas too. But making sure you're collaborating with your staff, taking in all ideas, listening to your folks that are closest to it, both technically and on the sales side. Those are the ones that really work when they have everybody kind of rowing in the same direction, and not a singular person saying, I like this approach and we're just going to do it and we're going to go forward, and doesn't take input from all others. Those you run into brick walls, and you can notice when you're looking at ads, or you're seeing things, or you're reading blogs, you can see the groups that get great collaboration and are working with people versus folks that have a single-mindedness, maybe an ego side of things, and it doesn't serve the purpose. You can really pick those out pretty quickly. So the goal for me is collaboration's huge.
So we've talked about content, how important content is, right?
Yeah.
How should company, we always talk about, telling the story, right? Stories are always more engaging than bullet points and facts,
Yeah.
especially when we're trying to sell or build brand awareness to the AEC industry. What is your approach when it comes to that type of content, kind of the storytelling approach?
It's tough, but you want to get the details in there, and you want to make it interesting to the reader. You want to avoid fluff. I'm bad at that. I'm a fluff guy. I love fluff. I have to really check myself on the fluff side of things, because I'm an enthusiastic person, as you could tell, and so I get
Yes.
into that. But fluff, it can be really, really bad, especially when you do too much of that. And so it's really getting their story and trying to boil it down to the best approach possible, that it's interesting, that it catches their attention, that it provides the solution at the end of the day that you want to push out. So that there's a combination of things, because a lot of people will meander in a story, and you want to get away from the meandering, and still make it interesting, still give it a kind of a start, middle, end, but not get lost along the way. And that's part of the process. Everybody's different, Shawn. That's the thing I think I found probably the most in the past, 14 years of doing this on my own, is no two clients and no two companies are the same. They may make the same exact tempering oven
Right.
or the same exact IG unit, but they're always different. Their personalities are different, their approaches are different, their budgets are different. No two are the same. When I find somebody that's the same as somebody else, I think that's when I retire,
Right.
because I've never seen it. Everybody's different.
And it makes sense. I mean, they're made up of people and people are different, right?
Yep.
And it's really kind of understanding in our world when we're connecting with our clients, really understanding them, their tone, their approach, and then trying to work with them on that
Big
at that
time.
level.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about industry engagement? How valuable is being involved with associations, events? We talked about some publications, Glass Magazine, in terms of like reach and credibility for companies.
It's huge, and so many people don't take advantage of it. Being at from the smaller conferences all the way up to the big ones like Glass Build are just so crucial, because you meet so many people, you build your network, you stay in touch with everything. You're staying in touch with codes, you're staying in touch with the latest movements, the latest news. You're in a room with a lot of other people that sometimes are not your competitors, but can give you intel, that will help your business, because they're talking about the market. It's amazing how companies, I don't get anything from going to Glass Build. Well, if you don't get anything from going to Glass Build, it's because you're not in that right mode.
That's
You
right.
should, there's 420 exhibits there and there's 8,000 people there. If you can't get something out of one day with those statistics, then you're doing it wrong.
That's
I mean,
right.
there's just so much, just running into somebody on the floor, you can find out something that will help you and help your business. And that's without even seeing the booth. So I'm a huge proponent of it. I've been successful in getting some of my, clients over. I still have clients that they don't see the value no matter how much I push and how much I show them.
Right.
They're stuck in their ways. And they're in the whole, we've never had to do it before. We're not going to start now. But the smarter companies are the ones that are jumping, feet first. It's funny. I was at a potential client in early February, and I was talking about BEC, and that's our annual event for the glazing contractor. But a lot of fabricators go,
Yep.
and I told the person about it, and he was really, "Are you sure this is going to be good?" I said, "Yes." He sent 5 people, which was I was shocked by that. Sent 5 people. And I checked with him afterwards, and he said it was unbelievable what they got out of it. They can't believe they never went before.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in it. If you're not going to these events, you're missing out.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So, in your opinion, what marketing trends or tactics are actually moving the needle right now for companies in the building product space and folks that you see and you work with?
It's so hard right now, because there's so many different options and so many different availabilities, and you're trying to reach different people. I still, there are certain things from the old school. I still think that PR, press releases are so underrated and crucial, and a lot of folks don't understand. I mean, if you put in a new machine, that could be a press release. If you hire a new VP, that's a press release. That's
Yeah.
good, publicity for your company that reaches. So I still believe in that tactic. I do think that social is crucial. I think that LinkedIn has become a great outlet. There's been some days lately and more recently that LinkedIn is suffered a little bit from Facebookitis, where people are becoming more personally opinionated on politics and other things and getting away from business. But you can't beat the reach. You can't beat who you reach on LinkedIn. I'm curious to see what happens with TikTok, because I know a lot of companies have had some initial great success there, but they just don't know what's going to happen. And, there's a security concern there. But if that gets worked out, that could be a tremendous outlet. YouTube is strong. It may not get huge numbers, but, people that are watching it and really taking it in. There's value to it. So there's a lot of different things, and then your typical, standards, your SEO, your good websites, optimization of your websites. It's all out there. It's all out there. I think, comically, even mailing is still going out there. It's
Right.
having some success depending on how you put it together. So I think, with the exception of faxing, I think everything's still on the table right now.
Yeah, and it didn't seem like that long ago people were still faxing, but I guess time just flies by.
Yeah, yeah. 2 years ago at Glassville, we had 46 people register by fax.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, that was as recent as 2 years ago. So there's still 46 different people sending in a registration by fax.
Oh my gosh. Well, my guess is those folks aren't on TikTok.
No, yeah, they have no idea what TikTok is. They think it might be
That's
the
right.
game with the X and O's that they play with their kids.
Yeah. All right. So finally, Max, for leaders that are listening to this podcast, what's the one thing that they could do this month or in the near future to improve how they communicate with their target audience?
Well, first and foremost, be open to ideas. Don't close yourself off to it. And be proud of what you do, and be open to collaborate with your folks, and then get the messaging out in the most efficient and fastest way possible, which in my opinion is the quickest and most immediate way is if you are not on LinkedIn with your company and posting at least once a week. You're missing out, because that is right now what people all up and down the supply chain use to vet their potential suppliers or customers, whatever the case may be. They go to that to see, are you active? What sort of work are you putting up there? So if I had one thing to say you need to put in place tomorrow that you haven't done yet, it would be, get on LinkedIn and be active at least once a week, have some content up there, be proud of what you do, collaborate with your folks to make sure you're supporting it.
I think that's great advice, and I'm 100% behind you with LinkedIn. In fact, I'll add to that even. We started, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago with many of our clients with the LinkedIn newsletter.
Yep.
And with the LinkedIn newsletter, where you're familiar with this, you're writing articles that are being posted, but when people subscribe, they get their email every time a new article comes out. And so now they get an email from LinkedIn. And with many of our clients, I mean, we've gotten hundreds of subscribers in a period of 30, 45 days. And again, as long as it's good content, and it goes back to our content discussion. And in our case, a lot of times we'll repurpose, whether it's an article or blog, we like the content, we'll repurpose it specifically for the newsletter on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and that's the other thing people don't understand. You create something once, you can repurpose it all over the place.
Yes.
That's the beautiful thing. You don't have to recreate things, from scratch. You create something once, and it's got multiple uses.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Max, this has been great. Always great catching up with you. Really appreciate you sharing your time and your insights. For folks that want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Truly, it's LinkedIn. Look for me on LinkedIn. My last name is Perilstein. You can see this ugly mug if you're watching this on YouTube, the picture on LinkedIn. But I'd love to connect with you. I'm a serial networker. The more people I can link in with, the better. So that's really the best way. If you're getting Glass Magazine weekly, it's a free subscription. If you're not getting it, just go to glassmagazine.com and sign up, and you'll see me every Tuesday in there.
Awesome. And for those of you listening here, be sure to check out Max's podcast, From the Fabricator. Fantastic resource for anyone in the glass and glazing industry and beyond. And with that, this concludes this Donovan Digital Podcast. Max, thanks again for your time, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Honored to be here. Thanks again, Shawn. I appreciate it.
All right, Max.